Module 3, Planning a Project. Module 3 is all about planning. Planning a project is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. You'll need to revisit and adjust your plans as you get new information or as new obstacles or opportunities arise. It's important to be flexible and willing to change your plans if required. This can help you to keep your project on track and make sure it meets your goals. Planning a project is used to determine what is to be delivered, how much it will cost, when it will be delivered, how it will be delivered, and who will carry it out. The key artifacts related to planning are the project management plan and the project schedule. Planning isn't complete until the project is complete. As the project progresses, you will encounter unknowns, which following an impact assessment will tell you that your plan needs to be revised. Additional requirements are also flagged during a project. They will go through a change request process, and if they are accepted, the change will need to be impact assessed and will result in a change to your plan. Initial planning must come up front. Your plan will develop and go through a number of iterations. This is to be expected. It is imperative that you have a starting point. This is a stake in the ground called the baseline schedule. Iterations of planning happen throughout the project. As you transition from the discovery phase through to the definition phase of the project, you should have gathered enough information through requirement gathering and planning workshops to develop a high-level plan. That becomes a detailed plan. Project schedule. Your schedule will consist of a number of activities. An effective way to pull together a plan is to group activities into categories. This is called a work breakdown structure. For example, if you were doing a home refurbishment project, you could use the following groupings: blueprints and permits, foundation, framing, electric and plumbing, interior, landscape. These work breakdown groups will contain a number of activities that are typically sequential to each other. The grouping of the work breakdown structure is usually also sequential. For example, once the blueprints and permits activities are complete, you move on to the foundation activities. There are anomalies, however. Let's say you were looking for an efficiency and an opportunity to save time on delivery. You may commence some of the foundation work in parallel to the blueprints and permits. You will need to assess the dependency between the activities to make this decision. Planning creates documents. An important part of the planning process is the creation of documents. These documents can include a project plan, a timeline, milestones, tasks, and budgets. By documenting all aspects of the project in this way, you can ensure that everyone involved understands their responsibilities and that the project remains on track. The more detailed the documentation is, the easier it will be to monitor progress and make sure that deadlines are met. There are many plans within the project management plan. Project overview. This is a background to the project. Essentially, what has instigated this project, i.e., is there a new legislation being implemented and the company is currently non-compliant? Scope. This is the specific deliverables of the project, which comes from the requirements that have been captured and agreed as in scope. It's important to be very clear on what's in scope or you're in danger of scope creep. Scope creep is when requirements that aren't already agreed begin to creep into the delivery plan. Aim and objectives. This is the output of the project. What delivery of the project is aiming to achieve? Resources. This is the people required to deliver the project. For example, a project manager for 10 days a month, software engineer ×2 full-time, etc. Dependencies. These are tasks either internal or external to the project that need to be in place for you to successfully deliver the project. For example, licenses need to be acquired for software prior to testing and go live. Change control. This is the process of capturing additional requirements, impact assessing them, and making a decision on whether to include them in scope. So you'll be documenting the process that change requests will go through during the project. Finance. This is the budget information of the project. The overall budget, where budget is allocated to. For example, £200,000 for hardware, £80,000 for engineering resource, and £50,000 for software. Schedule baseline. This is a stake in the ground plan that details the work breakdown structure of the plan, activities, durations, and owners. Various tools can be utilized to pull together a project plan. The most common tools are Microsoft Project, Primavera, Asta Power Project. Some still prefer to keep it simple and use Microsoft Excel. My most used tool is Microsoft Project. Key milestones. This will be informed by your detailed plan. These are milestones in a plan that highlight an achievement which is considered to be critical to the success of the project. For example, build phase complete. Quality control. This consists of how you inspect, measure, test to verify that the project outputs meet acceptance criteria defined during quality planning. Acceptance criteria. This is the requirements and essential conditions that have to be achieved before a deliverable is accepted. Risks and issues. You will capture all of the key risks and issues to the project in the project management plan, as well as documenting the process undertaken to manage risks and manage issues. An issue is the potential of a situation or event to impact on the achievement of specific objectives. An issue is a problem that is now breaching or is about to breach. Issues will typically require support from the project sponsor to agree a resolution. Stakeholder analysis. As touched upon earlier on in the course, stakeholder analysis is the identifying of stakeholder groups, their interest levels, and ability to influence the project. Governance. This is the framework of authority and accountability that defines and controls the outputs, outcomes, and benefits of the project. Communication plan. This is a document that identifies what information is to be communicated, to whom, why, when, where, how, and through which medium, and the desired impact of the communication. What is the project scope? The project scope highlights what the project will create, everything that is expected from the customer/stakeholders, and it also defines what is not in scope. It's important to have a clear idea of the project scope before you start planning and executing your project. What are the objectives of this project? What are the tasks that need to be complete? What are the deliverables? Having a clear understanding of what needs to be done will help you plan effectively and ensure that everyone is on the same page. It can also help you to set realistic goals and timeline expectations. Defining scope. When defining the scope of a project, it is important to consider the goals of the project, the resources that are available, and the timeline. A well-defined scope will allow the project manager to create an effective plan and timeline to meet those goals within the given constraints. Additionally, a clear scope can help stakeholders understand their roles in a project and how their contribution fits into the overall timeline. Establishing a solid scope at the beginning of the project will help ensure that everyone involved is working towards the same goal, and it can ultimately lead to a successful outcome. Defining the scope is a detailed description of the project and the product. It needs to be detailed so there's no ambiguity as to what's being delivered. Project boundaries. The key word we used earlier, scope creep. It's something to always watch out for. Clearly defining the scope with the right level of detail helps to identify when the project boundaries are being breached. It's always good to engage with stakeholders such as consultants, customers, professional and technical associations, industry groups, and subject matter experts. You can benefit by providing them with visibility of the project scope. It's beneficial to open up discussions to gather thoughts and even an idea of mandatory items that should actually be in scope. Project budgets and cost estimates. The costs associated with the project can be set in two different ways. Option 1. The business has already advised of a budget that the project manager must work with. Option 2. Your cost estimates will go through an approval process and the business is willing to approve the budget, potentially with some additional contingency. When budgeting, it's important to identify where the project costs will come from. This could be labor costs. This is the people costs for delivering the project. Equipment, software, materials, the cost of vendors. You may be outsourcing some of the work. Estimates. Estimates come first before you receive formal quotations and begin to obtain firm costs. When it comes to estimating, there are 3 ways to estimate. Rough order of magnitude. This is a ballpark estimate, which may be based on prior knowledge. Let's say a best guess, using the information you have available, which is likely going to be limited as you're so earlier on into the project. Budget estimate. This is based on the scope statement. It's moderately reliable as you have clear deliverables to produce better estimates against. Definitive estimate. Precise. Takes time to create. This is when you're at the point of receiving quotations from suppliers and have a clear idea of exactly what's being done, how long it will take, and how much resource is required. What is quality? Quality is conformance to the requirements. The output of the project must be fit for use and deliver exactly what was promised. Quality is a measure of how well a project meets its objectives and customer requirements. Quality control is the inspection of the work to ensure the quality. Quality control is utilized to make sure that the product adheres to the requirements, and there must be a clear plan for how defects will be remediated. It also ensures that products and services meet their specifications, that they're reliable and fit for the purposes that they were intended for. Quality assurance takes it a step further and helps ensure that the processes and procedures used to create those products and services are efficient and effective. Quality assurance activities can include inspections, tests, reviews, and audits. Risk management. When it comes to risk definition, you want to be very clear about what exactly constitutes a risk in the project. This means you should specify what factors might cause the project to fall behind schedule or incur additional costs. You should also identify potential external factors that could have an impact on the project, such as changes in legislation or other unforeseen circumstances. Once you have already clearly defined what constitutes a risk, you can then create plans and procedures to help mitigate the risks before they become a problem. Risks are uncertain, risks are negative or positive, risks threaten the project objectives, and there are both risks and rewards. There are a number of different risk responses that can be utilized when managing a risk, and these have been split by negative and positive risk planning. Negative risk planning. Avoidance. This is changing the work to avoid the risk. Transfer. Hiring someone to manage the risk. Mitigation. Lowering the probability/impact of the risk materializing. Acceptance. This is accepting the risk.